Imagine waiting for over a decade, hoping for something that could really change your life.
Yeah.
Like a life-changing surgery or therapy for your child.
Right.
Or the support that could help your family not just survive, but actually thrive.
Absolutely.
That's the reality for thousands of families right here in Texas.
It is, yeah.
They're stuck in this system, the Medicaid waiver system.
A system that often feels designed to keep them waiting rather than actually get them the help they need.
You want to know more about this, so today we're diving deep into a new report from Texas Watchdog.
Oh, I'm familiar with their work.
Yeah, they're known for their investigative journalism, especially on issues that hit close to home here in Texas.
Definitely. They've uncovered some real eye-openers.
And this report is no exception. They found that over 158,000 people are stuck on wait lists.
Wow.
For programs that could, help them live more independently.
Right. Programs that could help them avoid being placed in institutions.
And get this. Some have been waiting for more than 16 years.
16 years! That's longer than some people own their homes. It's hard to even wrap your head around that.
It's longer than many childhoods.
Exactly. Think about the developmental needs a child might have during those crucial years and the lack of support for families. It's just unconscionable.
It's like a whole city, bigger than Corpus Christi, just waiting, hoping for the help they need.
And let's be clear. These aren't just numbers on a page.
Right.
These are individuals, families, children growing up in a system that often feels rigged against them.
And, for our listeners who might not be familiar with the ins and outs of Medicaid.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a maze.
It can be. These waiver programs we keep mentioning, they're designed to provide home and community-based services as an alternative to institutional care.
Exactly.
Things like in-home therapy for children with autism.
Right. Or personal care assistance for seniors who need help with, daily tasks.
Or even job training for adults with disabilities.
It's about giving people the support they need to live full and independent lives.
So it's not just about getting on Medicaid, it's about accessing these specific programs.
Absolutely. That's where the system really seems to be failing.
Yeah. Because, it's not like Texas has completely ignored the issue, right? They have released some additional slots for these waiver programs recently.
Oh, they have?
They have.
For the 2022-2023 biennium.
Yes, for the biennium.
Which is a fancy way of saying their 2-year budget cycle.
Exactly. And there's always a but, right?
Right. There's got to be a catch.
They only opened up 1,549 slots across several programs.
Oh, you're kidding. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the need. It's like trying to empty a swimming pool with a teaspoon.
Exactly. It barely makes a dent in the wait list.
And this isn't just a Texas-sized problem.
Right.
Sadly, this mismatch between the growing need for home and community-based services and the resources allocated to them, this is a trend we're seeing nationwide.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Even if you make it through that wait list, even if you get approved for Medicaid, it's not like that's a guarantee of actually getting the care you need in a timely way.
It's true, unfortunately.
It's like waiting in line for a roller coaster,
okay,
only to find out it's broken when you reach the front.
Yeah, I get it.
Texas has this huge backlog when it comes to actually processing applications.
Oh, wow.
The report says something like 40% of applications took longer than they're supposed to.
Longer than the 45 days.
Yeah, longer than that federally mandated 45-day limit. And this was as of January of this year.
Wow, so you're talking about families, people who are in limbo?
Exactly.
Not knowing if they'll have coverage, having to maybe delay important care?
Or drain their savings just to cover the costs themselves while they wait.
It's incredibly stressful and disheartening.
You feel trapped. It's like the system itself is indifferent to your struggles,
It's a very real and frustrating experience for many.
It's like a domino effect, right? You've got families who are struggling, and then the healthcare system itself starts to feel the pressure.
Right, because everyone's interconnected.
And it's not just small clinics either.
Right.
Even the big hospitals are feeling the strain.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Texas Children's Hospital, one of the best children's hospitals in the entire country. They had to lay off staff and cut back on services.
Wow.
Because of these late Medicaid reimbursements.
That's significant. If a place like Texas Children's is struggling.
Exactly.
Imagine what smaller clinics are going through, especially those safety net clinics.
Especially the ones in rural areas.
Right, that are already operating on shoestring budgets.
It's like pulling the rug out from under them.
Absolutely. And remember that 30% drop in Medicaid revenue we talked about earlier.
Right, that some clinics reported.
It's beyond devastating for those on the front lines.
It's just heartbreaking to think about, those families, those kids caught in this system.
It's a tough reality.
It's more than just administrative hiccups, though, right?
Right.
There's a whole political side to this that we can't really ignore.
Absolutely not. It's intertwined with policy decisions and political ideologies.
We can't talk about Medicaid in Texas without talking about the elephant in the room, right?
No, we can't.
The state's refusal to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Texas is one of only 10 states still holding out.
It's become a real point of contention, especially when you consider what's at stake.
Especially when you realize that expansion would mean billions of dollars
Millions
in federal funding flowing into the state.
It's not just a difference of opinion at this point. That kind of money could be a game changer.
It could alleviate so much of the financial strain on the system.
Absolutely.
And yet, we see political leaders actively fighting against it.
It's true.
Texas Watchdog specifically calls out Governor Abbott and Attorney General Paxton,
right,
who have been very vocal in their opposition to expansion.
Very much so.
They've even taken legal action.
They have.
To block the Biden administration's attempts to reverse that Trump-era waiver extension.
That's one that's keeping Texas from expanding Medicaid.
Exactly. It feels like we're talking about two different worlds.
It does, doesn't it?
The world of policy debates and court battles.
Right.
And then the reality on the ground, where families are struggling just to get basic health care.
And those two worlds rarely seem to intersect in a meaningful way.
It really highlights how these political decisions, they have a very real human cost.
They do. And it's easy to lose sight of that when you're caught up in the abstract.
Yeah, and it's easy to get lost in the weeds, policy and all that.
Right.
But then you read a story like Michaela Hoops, and it brings it all back home.
It does.
She was hit with a $3,000 hospital bill.
Wow.
After her son was kicked off of Medicaid.
Can you imagine? Just for getting the care he needed.
It's like getting a bill for breathing.
Yeah.
It just highlights how broken the system is.
Absolutely. And sadly, her story is far from unique.
Not at all. The article states that as of March of this year, over 1.35 million Texas children had lost Medicaid coverage.
More than 1 million children.
More than 1 million. And these aren't kids whose families no longer qualify.
Right.
This is purely because of administrative issues.
Wow.
Red tape.
Bureaucracy.
Glitches in the system. And it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And the long-term consequences are huge.
They are. Early and consistent access to health care is crucial, especially for children.
It's about preventing bigger problems down the road.
Exactly.
Giving them the best chance to thrive. Texas likes to do things its own way.
That's for sure.
But when you see these numbers, you have to wonder, at what cost?
It's a valid question. What is the price of going it alone?
Especially when you compare Texas to states that did things differently.
Right.
The article highlights states like Oregon, Minnesota, Louisiana.
Okay.
They embraced Medicaid expansion.
Right.
And they actually came up with some innovative solutions to make their systems work better.
Interesting. Like what?
So Louisiana, they created this like express lane for renewals.
Okay.
Using data from SATAP application.
Oh, that's interesting. So they're using existing data to streamline the process.
That's right. They're cutting through all the red tape.
Right.
Automatically renewing coverage for the families that are still eligible.
That makes so much sense. It's about keeping people covered, not finding ways to kick them off.
Yeah, exactly.
Which seems to be the opposite of what's happening in Texas, unfortunately.
Yeah. It really makes you wonder.
It does.
Is Texas's approach actually saving money? Or is it costing the state more in the long run?
It's a critical question because this isn't just a moral issue, it's an economic one.
Exactly. And this is where that research from the Perryman Group comes in.
Right. The economic research firm.
They estimate that all of this Medicaid disenrollment in Texas could lead to a loss of almost $59 billion.
Wow.
In annual gross product.
That's billion with a B.
Billion with a B, and over 500,000 jobs.
That's a staggering impact.
It's like shooting yourself in the foot, economically speaking.
It really is. By not addressing this issue head on, Texas might be creating a much larger problem down the road.
It's a vicious cycle,
It is.
People lose coverage.
Right.
Uncompensated care costs explode. Hospitals and clinics, especially in rural areas.
Of course, they're already stretched thin as it is.
They struggle to stay open.
It's a ripple effect.
And then families are left scrambling, and it just widens that gap between the haves and the have-nots.
It's a classic example of how short-term thinking can lead to long-term consequences.
So to bring it all back to our listeners, what we're looking at here is a system in crisis.
We are.
The Texas Medicaid system.
Yeah.
But it's a crisis that's impacting real people.
It is.
Real families.
Absolutely.
Children.
Yeah.
People who rely on this system.
Their lives depend on it.
Texas Watchdog calls it a moral and economic failure, and it's hard to disagree.
It really is.
The question is, what's it going to take for Texas to really prioritize the health and well-being of its most vulnerable citizens?
And how long can we afford to wait for that change to happen? Those are the questions we need to be asking ourselves as a society.